Hi, I'm Stephanie Cooke, author of Oh My Gods and other wonderful things. You are listening to True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Stephanie Cooke about Oh My Gods 2, The Forgotten Maze. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Stephanie is an award-winning writer and editor based out of Toronto, Ontario. She lives with her snuggly cat that she is very allergic to. Her writing work is featured in Mark Millar's Miller World Annual, Wayward Sisters, The Secret Loves of Geek Girls, Toronto Comics Anthology, Para Northern, and more. Her current book is a follow-up to the successful Oh My Gods, entitled The Forgotten Maze. Oh My Gods 2, The Forgotten Maze is summarized as follows. When Karen moved to Mount Olympus, she certainly didn't expect to start junior high with a bunch of gods and goddesses, let alone discover she's a demigoddess who doesn't yet know her powers. Having recently joined the school newspaper, Karen decides to investigate a mysterious online troll that goes by the moniker M1N024UR, or Minotaur. This leads her to a treacherous maze beneath the school where Karen and her friends must complete a set of phases to leave the labyrinth. The stakes are higher than ever, and a wrong move could lead to some bull consequences in this amazingly action-packed, fast-paced, pun-filled companion to Oh My Gods. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Stephanie Cooke about Oh My Gods 2, The Forgotten Maze. So, Stephanie Cooke, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you for having me back.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started, though, I want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today?
Oh, yeah. I'm reading a novel right now. It's She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I know, obviously, I work in comics. I read lots of comics still, but I love reading prose before bed and, I don't know, just catching up with kind of my roots and what I enjoyed growing up. And yeah, this one's like a retelling of an emperor, I believe, from China, and it's very interesting so far, but I'm not very far in. So I've got literally a cart of books and graphic novels to get through, though. So I got to finish this up soon so I can knock some of these other ones off my to-be-read list.
Sure, yeah. Finding the time is tricky these days, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, first off, congratulate you on the great success of your book, Oh My Gods. That's tremendous, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you can honestly answer that, if you anticipated the positive response that the book received from readers. I mean, it sounds like it was a tremendous success.
Yeah, I mean, you hope that people will enjoy what you put out into the world, and you hope that it'll resonate with the audience, but you just can't ever know that for sure. At the end of the day, I'm a really firm believer in writing a story that you feel passionate about and that you will be happy with no matter what. So you need to be your biggest fan first and foremost, and just be happy with what you're putting out into the world, and then nothing else matters. And if, you have any measure of success that comes from that, that's just a bonus. So I'm really thrilled that people seem to be enjoying it and had been looking forward to the second book. So that's all I could ask for.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a good philosophy to have for sure. And speaking of a second book, you do have one out. It just came out. Mm-hmm. It's called Oh My Gods 2, The Forgotten Maze. So for those not familiar with this story, or how would you summarize it to someone who's coming to the book fresh? What would you say?
Sure. So both of the books, I think, hint at what they're about. Oh My Gods being Greek gods and goddesses, mythology, and basically the kind of concept behind them is that a normal young girl moves to Mount Olympus to kind of be closer to her dad and to take some time to get to know him better. She doesn't realize that Mount Olympus is like the Mount Olympus, though, and subsequently has to quickly adjust to the fact that her new junior high classmates and teachers are gods and goddesses. So that's a real learning curve for her to work through. And in the first book, students are mysteriously getting turned to stone around the same time that she arrives. She needs to recruit the help of her new friends to clear her name. And in the second book, it picks up pretty much right where the first one left off. And now they're deciding that they're going to start a school newspaper. They want to chronicle their adventures and the various skills that they all have and put them to use. And during one of the investigations, Karen decides to look into someone who's been crashing video games and like kind of ruining her time to spend with her friends back home. You know, she's kind of straddling both worlds at this point in time. She doesn't want to kind of forget the people back home, but now she's making a new home for herself. So somebody's been kind of crashing that time that she has with those friends, and she wants to get to the bottom of them, which leads to them finding a maze, a forgotten maze in the basement of the school. So they go on an adventure, as you do, to unlock the secrets of this maze and find out what's in the center of it.
Oh my, it sounds very intriguing, very good. And people who know their Greek mythology might already have a clue or two, but that's great. That's great. So you've got the gang back together again for the second book. You've got co-author Incha Fitzpatrick and illustrator Juliana Moon, which is tremendous that you've got her back. But now that this is the second book, how would you describe that specific creative process? Were there any shortcuts now that you've already had one book under your belt? Did you have to go through all the process again?
I think so. I think this one was actually, we did them back to back. So like we've technically been done these ones for, well, Incha and I, our part in this has been done for like a little while. Like, again, we did the scripts back to back. And then after Incha and I finished up, you know, Juliana was still working on the first book and then had to finish that up before obviously starting the second. But it's weird because like our part of it has been mostly kind of wrapped up for a bit. But doing it back to back was still pretty tricky though. You know, the first book we had really solidified in our minds. And it had been a story that we had been working on for many years. So that was really heavily thought out and tweaked over the years. And Oh My Gods too, we had and have, you know, a gajillion arcs to kind of do for that. We have so many ideas for what we could explore there. But it wasn't quite as fleshed out as the first one. So we did kind of have to start from scratch when we, you know, presented the options for book 2 and where we could kind of go with these stories. And then, you know, the publisher and our editor has to kind of pick a direction and we have to kind of flesh it out from there. So a lot of the work on the outline, the skeleton, and the world building for the first book had been done prior to us even selling the first book. Whereas with the second one, sure, like the characters were built, the world had been like established. So we didn't have to do that part of things, but we did have to obviously like build our outline together, figure out our game plan and, you know, integrate all of our thoughts into one cohesive outline that we could then take to the script. So that one was like a little trickier because we had just been coming off the first book. And I think, you know, we were kind of just like going through like those growing pains where we were just around each other so much, but we both know each other well enough to know that it's nothing personal. It's just like, you know, okay, we finished this thing. I'm just like not going to talk to you for like a little bit, but like it's not personal. I love you. I just need some space for a bit. Right. So we were really up in each other's business trying to get this all done. And then, you know, that introverted need to just then not talk to anybody for like a while, not just Incha, but right. Yeah. And then Juliana is, of course, again, just beautiful, wonderful, so talented. And we were just so excited to be working together on another story.
That's great. Good to hear. Good to hear. Now, you've written as an author for a variety of different audiences. So I wanted to ask you, is there a difference in writing for middle grade readers, which is the audience for these books, versus perhaps the more adult books that you've written?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, kids tend to have like a little bit more of a shorter attention span. I think that's kind of becoming a thing across the board. Like people kind of want things more is less sort of style. But with writing for kids, you really have to have like 5 panels on the page, like max. Like there's obviously exceptions to this rule, but like you want to have as few panels on the page as possible, as few like word balloons and like captions and narrations and stuff. So you're trying to tell a story that is like pretty short, really, like for telling kind of a graphic novel story length feature book. But you have to do that in the most concise way possible, with as few panels as possible, with as little dialogue as possible. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, especially if you're not familiar with that and you don't know how to kind of just like pare back your voice. It's easy to want to crowd the page with dialogue and not let the artist's art speak for itself. And it's a big trust exercise in learning to let your artist step in and make sure that the art fills in the gaps that the dialogue doesn't. So obviously that's part of the process for any graphic novel too. It's a marriage and you're trying to kind of make sure that both coexist perfectly and they're balanced. And that's trickier for certain projects than others. But yeah, writing for like older audiences is a lot of fun too. Like playing around with those audiences, mediums, genres, all that is wonderfully fun and can be such a joy to push your boundaries. I really like writing for middle grade though, because like you can tell so many silly jokes and get away with like a lot of like fun stuff that like, I mean, you can be funny in adult and like YA stuff too, but like not necessarily to the same degree that you can really like yoke it up with kids. So I think it's just kind of like with kids, you don't want to talk down to them. You want the story to be at their level, but without being condescending.
Right.
And it's easier to write for adults because it's like, you know what an adult sounds like. And, you know, it's not necessarily easier, but it's at least you're not kind of like wondering, how do adults talk?
Yeah.
So I don't know. They all have like their different like methods, quirks, and all that stuff. But yeah, like kids comics is a really excellent exercise in learning that less is more.
Oh, very good. Very good. Now, I don't know if this is a fair question to ask what's next for you, but should we expect a book 3 in the Oh My God series?
I mean, I hope so. Like with all publishers, unfortunately, like we would keep the books going for as long as possible. We have a bajillion stories, as I've kind of mentioned before, but it's all a numbers game to publishers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if people go out and buy the book, if they support it, if they tell our publishers that they love what we're doing, I really hope that we'll get to do more stories and continue to expand this world and this franchise. So cross my fingers. I mean, I'm forever working on new projects and properties and kind of just trying to keep going, but I would love to revisit this and keep it all going.
Oh, very good. We will see. Time will tell. So I don't know if you're noticing, but seems like there's more festivals and conventions starting to happen. So I wanted to ask you if you have any plans to be out and about for the rest of the year.
Yeah. So I haven't really made extensive plans overall. I'm not ready to travel yet. But that being said, I am going to be boothing at TCAF this year. I will be somewhere on the second floor. I do not know where yet because they've not told us. They're still figuring all of that out. It's early days.
Sure.
So that is the show that I will be for sure doing in person this year, pending pandemic stuff, obviously, which is constantly changing, evolving, whatever. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I would love to like get out to more shows soon and do stuff, but I don't know how I feel about flying yet. I don't know how I feel about like kind of traveling widely. So I guess we'll just kind of see how things shake out and go from there. But TCAP for sure.
I was also looking at your Twitter feed and noticed that you're working on a video game called Pico with Kitten Cup Studio. Sorry if you could talk a wee bit about that.
Of course. So yeah, Kitten Cup is a Toronto-based indie game studio. They are absolutely wonderful. Saffron Aurora, who is the creative director there, has also worked on like comics projects. You probably know her from the Toronto Comics anthologies, and she did for TO Comics. They have this wonderful little short series of short stories, shorter than the other anthologies, that is. But it's called My Neighbor Toronto, and it's a
Okay.
Totoro-inspired Toronto cover.
Right.
And Saffron illustrated that cover. So she's extremely, extremely talented, incredible artist, both in comics and in video games. And I have been since last year working as a writer on their video game Pico, which is a tea making simulator that takes place in a town that's populated by cats. So it's like a cozy, wholesome game, like not necessarily high, like action, fast paced kind of style. It's, just kind of like day at a time, enjoying yourself and meeting these characters who you'll hopefully want to get to know better. And we've been working really hard to ensure that you want to by creating them and turning them into your nice little friends.
Oh, now that must be a completely different medium for writing versus comics or graphic novels. Or do you see there's something that spans all those different types of mediums?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. I'm learning a lot, and there's definitely like video game software to learn and how to input the dialogue and all that stuff, which is vastly different than what I currently do. But there's a lot that does parallel what I'm already doing in comics. In the cutscenes or the character dialogue, it's really important that less is more, and that you're getting, the story across in as few blurbs as kind of possible, or word balloons. So there are definite lessons to take from comics that I can apply to this, but this is learning a lot of new things for me and stepping outside my comfort zone. I am a very firm believer, again, that like to kind of grow as a creator, you need to take risks, try new things, play with different mediums, genres, again, right, for different audiences. And I'm really, really blessed to be working on this project. It's so up my alley. It's so much fun. The art is incredible. Everybody who's working on this game is so talented, and I really can't wait for people to get to play it.
Sounds exciting. That's for sure. Do you have any other future projects you can talk about? I mean, we know we've talked about Oh My Gods, and you've got video game stuff. Anything else on the go that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I have a few things that are kind of like unannounced as of right now, but next year I have 2 books set in Toronto coming out. So I have my first YA graphic novel is arriving sometime next year. I believe both of these books are actually fall 2023 currently. No specific dates as of now. But I have a book called Pillow Talk, which is set to be released next year, again, a YA. And then I have a middle grade graphic novel with Canadian Whitney Gardner, and that is called Rack Pack. And that is, we're really pandering to that Toronto raccoon mascot community.
Right.
And it is 2 raccoons and a possum that thinks he's a raccoon as they go on a heist for the motherlode of all dumpsters.
Oh.
So I love all of my book babies equally. I do. You can't choose favorites. And I have fun in completely different ways on each project. But that being said, collaborating with Whitney has been a true joy. I love working with her so much. This book is a delight. And like, if all of Toronto does not rally for this book, I will be so disappointed in this city. It's, we're so proud of it. As I said, we love it. And that's all that really matters. But if the city and the world decides to love it too, that would also be great.
Sure. Cherry on top for sure. So you've got a lot of stuff on the go. I'm wondering where you recommend that people go to find out more about your current and future projects when they go online.
Absolutely. So I am terminally online. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, etc. At Hello Cookie. If for some reason you can't find me that way, stephaniecooke.ca is my website. It has those social medias and all of the other places that I exist linked as well. So you can go there. I try to post updates as often as possible on my site. And again, on my various socials, which you can find there as well.
Thanks to Stephanie for the chat. You can discover more about Stephanie on Twitter at HelloCookie and online at stephaniecooke.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. And please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.